Good God, come on.
God, that's unbelievable. I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. My name is Elliott Morgan, and I'm here with Peter Rollins. We do a podcast basically every week, and we're not even going to pretend that we've missed one for Thanksgiving or the one before that for any reason.
We should have done something on Thanksgiving. A theme like topical. That's what people do to make their podcast big, isn't that right?
Yeah,
Be
right.
Topical.
I know on Thanksgiving weekend, I certainly was like, what podcasts can I listen to of people giving thanks? That sounds fun. Yeah. But no, it's good to give thanks, and we're very thankful, and I'm very thankful. We do this podcast where we talk about the possibility of experiencing life before death. Who even talks about that? We don't know. Pete knows so many things, and he's a brilliant human being.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're too kind.
I just enjoy all this stuff so much. We have fun conversations. I think you guys enjoy them as well. This particular episode was inspired by a guy named Lance, whose last name I won't mention, who contacted me and gave us a topic suggestion. And usually we come up with our own. And this one I thought was a particularly very good one. So we're talking about survivalism. We're talking about the preppers. We're talking about people who are kind of obsessed with an apocalyptic scenario. I think this is an excellent topic because I personally feel like people are going through this. There is there's a closing out of the year. There's a closing out of the election cycle that we've all been going through. You like to think there's going to be a closing out of the pandemic that's currently happening, but there isn't yet. And so I think there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of people going, the sky is falling, and sometimes for very good reason. But there is a whole other subset of folks, and you know them, I know them. These people have bunkers, and they got buckets of dehydrated food, and they are well aware that they know that the end is nigh, and they will be ready, and we won't, and that makes me self-conscious. And so I want to talk about that so I feel better about myself, because I don't have a bunker, and I don't have any prepper supplies ready to go, really, at all. However, I do watch a lot of Survivor, and I watch a lot of Alone, which you should watch Alone on the History Channel if you haven't gotten a chance. And so we might touch a little bit also on UFOs today. We might touch a little bit on that. This
is very much an Elliott Morgan kind of episode.
And also,
we want to touch on, and maybe kind of, what do you call those?
Weezer.
Real life
We're going to talk about
households?
Weezer. What
do you call those shows? Real life housewives?
Reality
TV.
Yes,
so
we're going to talk
UFOs.
Weezer, and
survivalism.
So this is a great topic. Cheers. We are enjoying a nice gin and tonic as we haven't seen each other since before the holidays. So it's now December. Pete, how are you doing before we dive into everything?
Doing good, man. I've just been doing the usual. I always feel I should try and think of something interesting to say when you ask that, because you do often ask me that. I should prep.
Like a prepper.
Oh, wow. You see what you did there? It's a callback. Very nice.
Welcome to the hosting board. This is all the work I do in the podcast. I intro it. Pete says smart things. I interrupt him, and I go, that's crazy, man. And then that's the whole episode. So
this is going to make us millionaires.
It is. You wait.
Well, if the hyperinflation, then maybe we will be millionaires.
Exactly. Speaking of apocalyptic ideas,
exactly.
Such as that.
Although I have you ever heard of down a rabbit modern monetary theory? I've been weirdly down a rabbit hole of it, but it says that we literally can't go into hyperinflation and can't be bankrupt, because any government that can print its own money is kind of immune to that. So anyway, that's boring. That's not going to be ever a topic of the Fundamentalists. But for some reason, I've been watching hours of MMT videos.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. But if you start getting into people's heads about what we could do as a government that just prints our own money, it is kind of a crazy wormhole.
Well, see, this is the weird thing, right? These guys argue that technically taxes don't pay for goods and services. You know, we think we pay taxes so the government can do things like build roads, do schools. Like, no, taxes used to be governments would destroy their taxes. They would get the tax in and they just destroy it.
Yeah,
because
really?
The government doesn't need the money because it can just print the money. Tax is a way of getting money out of the monetary system. So once you start thinking about how money works from the perspective of MMT. It sounds like that fighting. What's that fighting thing people
MMA.
do? Yeah, not
That
as
was just like
interesting as
DMT.
MMA. But once you start realizing that, oh yeah, basically the government can print money to build what it needs to build, and then it taxes to get the money out of the system to avoid hyperinflation.
People being happy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Other possibilities arise, but anyway, on YouTube. You end up going down weird rabbit holes, and that was my most recent rabbit hole.
I'm definitely curious about that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've never, but I mean, the money for taxes still goes to these things, right? Like or at least, is that just how you justify?
Like it's kind of
bills?
it's kind of how it works or how it looks like it works. But here's the funny thing, right? We used to think that like the common notion of money is that money was developed in a market. So is like we're bartering stuff. You might not want chickens when I want cows. We find a third thing that can stand in for value.
A symbol.
Yeah. But that's actually not how money started. Money did not, and this is a bit of a crazy thing. Money did not start as a way to facilitate barter. It looks like money began as a way to avoid blood feuds. The first time money was used was have you hurt me? So that I wouldn't hurt you back, you had to give me something. So societies started using money not in the market economy, but as a way to avoid violence.
Like, okay, whoa, all right, well, maybe we will do a whole episode.
Yeah.
Because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you agree with this theory?
Yeah. So there's a guy called David Graeber. He sadly died just last year. He wrote a book called Debt, The First 5,000 Years. And it's a massive book, but it was a bestseller. And yeah, he basically gives, I think, very, very strong evidence.
It's a strong case.
That money predates markets. In fact, money is as old as writing, right? Money goes back to the
Notes.
very beginning. Yeah. Was it?
Like it's a note.
Yeah, no, like
write it
yeah,
down.
or sometimes it was whatever it was, might have been grain or it might have been whatever, but some sort of way of representing value.
Is there anything to do with that information on an individual basis?
What do you mean?
Like, does it change my behavior in any way to know that?
Yeah.
Or should it? Should I not pay my taxes? Because it sounds like I shouldn't pay my taxes. And I love not
Although
paying
you've
my
told
taxes.
me that you always do tax avoidance anyway, so
Yeah, I do.
That's a lie.
No, I do always avoid it.
Yeah.
But I do it.
But
They
you
catch
do
up
it,
with me,
yeah.
but I wait for them to come to me.
Oh, the IRS came after me. Thankfully, it was a mistake. But didn't I tell you this? Is that Patreon.
You told me this. I don't know if you've told them this.
I know. Should I? Are you allowed to do
No, I
this?
think
Is this
it's
too
fine.
personal? Yeah.
I think it's super interesting.
Yeah. So I get paid some money. Actually, most of my money at the moment because of COVID through Patreon, and then Patreon gives the money to PayPal, and then PayPal gives the money to me. But the IRS thought that I was getting the money from Patreon and the money from PayPal, so they thought that I was paying only half my taxes. And my goodness, they sent a rather nasty letter. A kind of letter that if you suffered from anxiety would definitely make you upset.
A kind of letter that if you're just a normal, chill guy who is chilling, then yeah, it might really rub you the
it would
wrong
ruin
way.
your day. It would ruin you. I wanted to phone them up and say
no,
to them, do you not understand that this letter could upset people?
You told me the amount. And I remember being like, I'm so glad you haven't jumped out of this window. Because I truly would be like, because I've had mix-ups happen with we both are involved in Patreon in some small capacity, but when I set up the Patreon for Valley Folk years ago, I did so in a way that I thought I got all worked out, but it was a similar thing where, I don't know about the PayPal thing, but it was all in my name, and then it happened again this past year, and I did the Elliott kind of way of handling it where I didn't even... I didn't even pay attention to it, but it was again. I
You
got
should
a
do a
letter.
little course on that. The skill of
Dude,
of just avoiding things.
It's remarkable, and there's something there, and I'll never figure. I would figure it out. I'll figure it out later. But like the terror of finding out that the government thinks you made X, Y, and Z when you didn't is such a horrifying misunderstanding to go through.
I know. Honestly, the letter, like, there was bold in it, and there was, like, it was just a nasty. And I did want to phone them up and say, like, if this could upset people.
Hey, be nice.
Be nice.
Hey, nice. IRS, you thought about being nice.
Just buy me a coffee, buy me a drink. I don't know, and then have the conversation.
Yeah, ease into it, not with this letter and the stamp and the logo. Well, let's talk about survival, speaking of that.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to do a bit of a plug for a Northern Irish director. If we're talking about survivalism and the apocalypse, there's very few good directors coming out of Northern Ireland. Helen is one of them, who's I think will be an incredible director worldwide. Stephen Finkelton is...
or writer.
Yeah, on both. Stephen Finkelton is a director who did a movie called The Survivalist, and I think you can still get it on Netflix, and it's kind of a low-budget apocalyptic movie, and it's really, really good. It's about this guy in the woods, and these two women find his house, and then it's all about their relationship. It's very dark. It's very good, so I would check it out.
Well, that's great. Okay, and so what about it is what draws you to it? Is just
so there's very few words. I mean, not that you notice it, but you go like, oh my goodness, like you're just watching a guy who is completely isolated. You don't even know what's going on in the world, but just it's collapsed. Something like, and it's just this beautiful expression of a type of madness that sets in from being alone for a long period of time. So it's a strong movie. Yeah. He's a controversial character, the director, in many ways, but it's very interesting. I think he'll do something great in the future. I mean, I think he's got a really good eye for things.
A lot of good stuff coming out of Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Past few years that I've seen.
the Titanic. That was a real success.
It was.
The DeLorean car. Do you know the DeLorean car was built in Belfast?
Yeah, you guys are.
We're really good at shit that goes wrong.
You're gonna get something.
Yeah.
You know that if the Titanic hadn't swerved, they probably would have been fine.
Is that right?
Yeah, it would have hit. It would have still hit, but it wouldn't have done the.
It wouldn't have done the damage. Yeah, I've heard a few different really interesting things. I always forget them, but about what they should have done. But I think I've heard that as the swerving might have caused the problem.
Do you know that the Titanic is named after the Titans and the Olympians, and the Titans were before
that's a bit easier to know. Titanic, Titans.
Yes, that one's easy. But did you know that the Titans, when they were defeated by
sunk by an iceberg?
They were banished to the underwater realm.
Ooh.
And there's a sister ship to the Titanic called the Olympian that sailed perfectly, and the Olympian was fine. The Titan was the one that was banished to the underworld.
Wow. Well, you know, there's a conspiracy theory that actually they sank the sister ship for insurance, but they pretended that it was the Titanic.
Ooh, interesting.
It's a weird conspiracy theory. It's not even that interesting, but this conspiracy theory is the Titanic never sank. It was what was it called? The
Olympic, I think,
Olympic
or Olympian. I don't know.
Yeah, they painted it up to look like the Titanic, and they sank it to get insurance.
Really?
Yeah. It's not as interesting as the moon landing, but
it's a good one. Yeah. Speaking of conspiracy theories, we're going to talk about aliens maybe in a little bit, but it all comes back to this idea of survival. So I at least, I won't speak for Pete, I enjoy survivalist things. I love the idea. I actually, maybe I'm going to sound like a crazy person here. I have no problem with people building bunkers, stocking up, learning how to shoot a bow and arrow, and clean meat, whatever, grow food. I think it's all awesome as particularly a hobby. I think it's a really fun way to probably vent a lot of that fear and frustration that you might have. I watch a show called Alone a lot of this show. My parents recommended it to me. It's a little, you never know when your parents recommend you TV shows. There's a generational divide that happens sometimes. They hit this show out of the park.
The other one they recommended was Touched by an Angel.
Gilmore Girls, Touched by an Angel. Yeah. Actually, Gilmore Girls is really good. But it's so fascinating. And what they'll do on this show, on the History Channel, is they'll kill animals constantly. And it's hardcore, it's legit, and they're completely by themselves in the
except for the film crew.
There's no film crew. They just give them cameras.
Okay.
They have to do health checks every once in a while. So where they take their weight and then sometimes they take them off the show, even if they're still enjoying it because their health has gotten so bad. It's so cool. So all that stuff is super fascinating. When you watch it, at least when I watch it, any kind of survival thing or prepper thing, in my mind, I'm like, I would fail at this immediately. And I recently had an episode with wildlife. I've had a couple recently with nature that haven't gone well. Because I recently moved. And I moved to a place where it's kind of built into a hill. So the first thing that happened...
That's cool. Like a James Bond bad guy
You would
house.
think.
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's elevators.
Actually built into a mountain.
Yes, it's incredible.
Yeah.
We have missiles.
Yeah.
But I was outside and like there's these windows that I guess have like a reflection. Anyway, a bird just like flew into this window and like smashed its head like badly, I assume. Hit its head. I don't know if it was smashed. It wasn't smashed. I checked on it later. It fell down. I was like, what the? I was like, what's happening? And I guess maybe they saw a reflection or something and they flew in. And I was like, I got it. I'm the veterinary guy. I gotta take care of this bird now. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this bird. And I like pick it up and I put it up, a little bit.
So it's alive, but it's like kind of
shocked. I think it was kind of in shock. It was really, really sad. And I kind of like was like, do you need anything? And I can tried giving it some water. And then eventually kind of tapped it and it flew away and was kind of okay. Then, come to find out,
remember that bird that lived on our porch?
Same idea. Actually, wow, weird. Yeah, same idea. That's
because there was a bird that was like, it couldn't fly, and it was literally on our porch for
like a long time.
For a long time, weeks, days at least, and maybe a week or more.
Yeah. And both me and you were like, we're not doing anything. We don't know what to do with this.
We don't know what to do, but it eventually
we know what the
off.
humane thing is to do, and it's not.
Oh yeah, we were supposed to kill it, but we did decide. I remember. I think we talked about it, and I was going to go and kill it. And then it was gone. So,
like it heard.
Yeah.
It was similar to that, and then also similar to that, we there's Goose. She has got to go to the bathroom. Leave the door open at night sometimes. Critters have just been coming into the house, and I'm not used to this. We called an Orkin person. The Orkin person laid these traps down, but I thought the traps were like, these traps are going to kill the mice. They put down sticky traps because of the dog. Yeah, and so it got just stuck there. And so I woke up in the middle of the night. This thing's like all in agony and screaming. And then I thought this thing was supposed to. I don't want to do anything with this.
What was it? What kind of critter?
A mouse.
A mouse. All right.
It may have been a rabbit. It was small. It was a mouse. And it was the poor guy was just like, and the dog is just asleep 10 feet away. And I'm like, if this dog wakes up, this dog will eat, and you are dead. And she was dead to the world. And so I was like,
this mouse is dead anyway, because how can you take them off that without pulling off their legs?
And so here we go. So this is what
I hope you kind of try to pull it off, and it ended up. You set it out without any legs.
Well, okay. So, all right, whatever. So, listen. So, it definitely tried to get off of the mat a lot. And I think that it sort of like hurt itself a little bit in the process and kind of twisted itself in a bad way. And it was horrible. But I was like, I'm not going to. And I Googled it. And basically, it's like you either hit it on the head. To kill it.
Oh, to kill it? Or to
kill it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, not to just be mean. Not to teach it a lesson. Yeah. Or you pour vegetable oil on the trap, and that undoes the adhesive to let it go.
Yeah.
And so I was staring at it, and I'm like in my underwear, and it's at night, and I was just about to fall asleep, and I'm like, I can't kill this thing because I'm not going to be able to like kill this animal and then like go to sleep and sleep well because I'll feel horrible. And I was like, I shouldn't have done these stupid traps. But I
hope you didn't heat up vegetable oil and pour boiling vegetable oil on the mice.
Not this time. If it comes back. But I did take it. We didn't have vegetable oil. I had olive oil. And so I took this dispenser of olive oil.
That's such a bourgeois way of freeing a mice.
Dude, exactly.
Yeah, no, I don't. We use olive oil to get rid of our mice.
Extra virgin only. And I took it outside, and I'm like this poor guy, and I'm just dousing it with olive oil like I'm a little Italian chef.
You're kind of making it very tasty for whatever predator.
There's no way that sucker survived. It truly almost started looking delicious to me as I was like, this is so stupid. And as I was pouring the olive oil on it, it was like unsticking free like out of a movie. Like it was like it reminded me of the end scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit when the Judge Doom or whatever like gets glue stuck on the cement roller and he can't get it off. But eventually it roamed free into the night, just covered in olive oil. And I was like, I could not survive anything. I would not be able. I was like, because on a loan, they would kill that mouse and they would eat it, and it would be like a day's worth of food.
They would be like, listen, this guy died quicker than he would have if he would just alone. Like he died within 3 hours.
Exactly. Yeah. He died aggressively.
Yes.
And quickly and like he wanted to.
We just laid him down 5 minutes ago and he's already dead.
He's like, yeah. I would call within 10 minutes. I would be like, it's too cold. I'm not doing it. But
how do I get cable?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know.
Where do I plug in my phone?
Postmate says they can't find it. They can't find my hat. But it's a wonderful show. But I don't think I could do it. However, I'm still drawn to the idea of going out into the woods. And I'm drawn to the idea of feeling a little ahead of the curve if everything went down to zero at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's
because you've watched Alone a few times.
Exactly.
You feel like, I should come to you if the apocalypse happens. I should find you.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay. Yeah.
That's not a good move.
Well, yeah, this brings me to what I was thinking about when you said about the apocalypse, because I was thinking like there is in any time in history, there's obviously things can go wrong. There's difficulties throughout the entire history of humanity. There's wars, there's rumors of wars, all of that. But what's interesting to me is what hitches a ride on genuine preppers. And whenever we are concerned about the destruction of the government or destruction of democracy or this or that, even there's the literal sense of it where we just read about stuff, we're concerned about some issues within the world, but then there is, and I mentioned this to you, like there's the metaphorical dimension, and then there's the thing called concrete thinking. The metaphorical this is a great way of thinking about the unconscious. The unconscious is the speech that is going on within your speech that you don't recognize. So whenever someone's, for example, thinking that society's falling apart, society's breaking down, often what you discover is that even if they really believe that, it's also communicating that they feel that they're breaking down, that they're falling apart, or that they're breaking up, or whatever it is, whatever the words are that they're interested in terms of the survivalist or the apocalypse, it's actually telling you also about their inner life, something about their inner life. So I'll say it was somebody else. I had a friend who was worried that I died in COVID. And of course, so the first thing I thought was, whenever you fear that someone's died from COVID,
God.
it's why do you want me to have died, right? So,
God.
and it did turn out that they were annoyed with me unconsciously, because
did they want you to die?
Well, unconsciously, not in reality, but they were frustrated with me because I hadn't kind of checked in with them about something. But what was interesting to me is, of course, their fear when they said, I woke up and I had this genuine fear that you died of COVID and I just wanted to check in. It was like, oh, that's great. Like, so why are you pissed off with me? Because
never check and see if a psychoanalyst has died.
Yes.
Never reach out to someone who knows what psychoanalysis is and be like, hey, man, just want to make sure you're super healthy. They're not going to.
Yeah.
It's the interpretation. They're going to read you for filth.
I could have been wrong, because you can be wrong. But it was like Hillary Clinton, I think her daughter once, what was the story? Was really afraid that she was going to die. And I heard a psychoanalyst talk about why did her daughter want her to die? That's very funny, because when someone wakes up in the middle of the night and goes, oh, I'm terrified that you died of COVID, you go like, in your unconscious, I died of COVID, right? And so now what does that mean? And the truth is, they were annoyed at me. We worked it out. It was totally fine. Why was I saying that?
Sounds like you want this person to die.
Oh yeah, God, I can't remember what point I was trying to make.
It was something about how with the preppers and stuff, there's a wish fulfillment.
Oh yes, so there's a wish fulfillment, but part of the wish fulfillment might be, yes, we want this world as it presently is to die. Like, so the prepper, in their fear of the end of the world, is wanting the end of the world, and that's completely logical, because this world that we're in, which is very destructive for a lot of people, like, that maybe we can imagine a new world. So I think a lot of people who are preppers, there's a small possibility that their fear of the end of the world is connected to a fear that their world is ending, that there's something
maybe a
them.
Big possibility, right?
Yes.
I would say there's a small possibility that they're
that
right.
It's not. Yeah.
And both can be true.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Like, if you're like freaking out about a war breaking out, or about whatever it is, pandemic, all of those things can be true, and you can still kind of hitch a ride. You can hitch your anxieties to it in a way that allows you to go through your whatever concerns. But I guess it's maybe, here's the thing: I like the idea of you grabbing your drink.
I was going to.
I'll keep talking while you sip. You don't even need to worry about it. But like, if you get stressed out enough and you get freaked out enough, and you're like, I'm gonna make sure I'm taken care of, my family's going to be taken care of. I kind of like the idea that you are able to sublimate, would that be the right word? Certain anxieties, maybe sublimate's the wrong word.
So sublimation definitely is the best defense. Yeah, it's where you make it into something positive.
Yeah, well, this wouldn't really be positive necessarily. Okay. It's only positive if it's actually helpful, right? Otherwise, you're just wasting money.
Yeah, well, give me the example of what you were going to say.
If you're like, you wouldn't be sublimating your anxieties to become a prepper, because becoming a prepper is only sublimation if you needed to be a prepper. Yeah, it's not good to become a prepper if you have nothing to prepare for. I mean, you're just doing it as part of your anxiety. It would be like a displacement or something.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a way of avoiding a confrontation with your own suffering. Yeah.
So then if you continuously prep, and you continuously dig the hole, pour money into this like other life that you kind of have, it's sort of weird. It's like there's almost an infidelity to it, of like, I have this life that I lead every day, in this job and this family, but I have another life that I dream of where it's just me, and if I go outside, it's toxic, like that kind of thing. And it's like, how do you ever get how do you work through anything with that? That's my concern, I guess, with the whole situation.
And the thing is about the unconscious with this is, it's never, when I talk about myself, or I talk about I'm a prepper and I'm prepping and I'm using the word I'm doing this, I think the world's going to end. The unconscious never has an I, so it's this element within my speech that is telling me the truth. But it's like, if you're talking, yeah, but without an I. So it's like, if I'm saying to somebody on a Zoom call, we keep cutting out, we're breaking up, I can't hear what you're saying, we're going to have to try and reconnect, right? Potentially that term, we're breaking up, is saying a truth about what I feel about the other person. There's no I to it. There's no we're breaking up. It's like, there's within the language something about myself that I'm not aware of. Within the prepper, often whatever words they're using, like the world is falling apart, often if you feed that back to them and you say, do you ever feel like you're falling apart? And they might go, yeah, I had this terrible relationship with my family and I felt precarious. Or they say the world's precarious. So they're saying the world is precarious. But then you go, oh, you use the word precarious. Have you ever felt precarious? And you find that, yes, the unconscious has hitched a ride on their kind of legitimate fears. That's kind of what the unconscious does.
Do you think it could work the other way too? Like, say everything's going great, or say everything's actually, objectively speaking, going horribly. Bombs are falling, sky's falling, sun's burning up, it's freezing or whatever. But all of a sudden, some people are like, oh no, I'm doing pretty good. I feel like everything's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be all right. That's probably just an unconscious, like, venting about your own personal comfort in life and your own personal situation.
Yeah, it can be. Well, so what's unconscious is usually what you can't face. So if someone keeps saying everything's great whenever everything's terrible, that's more likely that they're it's a reaction formation. They're saying the opposite. They're kind of trying to avoid a confrontation. So it's rare that the unconscious speaks what is good, because you don't have to repress that. You have to repress what is not good.
I had to make a point to stop opening every therapy session that I do with "things are great." That was a real big tell.
Yeah. That's bad. Yeah, it's like the person who says, "I'm not an alcoholic." If you're not an alcoholic, you don't have to tell people you're not an alcoholic.
Right.
The denial itself is like, I'm going to go to the pub or I'm going to go to the off license to get some drink for the party. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm like, why are you telling me you're not an alcoholic?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you are, but it means that you're denying something. Like, I had a dream and it's not about my mother.
Could they also be, I mean, you could be suffering from some sort of, I guess you're right. I'm trying to figure out a way around it, but I'm thinking,
but you are right that it's not always a negative. But like for Freud was the one who realized that whenever you say a negative, it can often mean an affirmation, but not always. As he said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Because sometimes people could be accused of being an alcoholic when they're just surrounding themselves with people who don't drink at all or something, and they assume that about them and yada yada yada. But then you have to ask why they surrounded themselves with people like that in the first place. This is just what we do on the podcast, you guys. This is just kind of the fun. But
here, you know what the most interesting thing about some preppers is, right? So there's the metaphorical, that's a neurotic structure where someone is saying, I think the world's falling apart. Like, I think a lot of this happened in America when, with COVID, people were losing their jobs. People were worried about paying the rent. People were worried about, they were stuck in the house with a partner they maybe hadn't been stuck in the house with before. There was a lot of personal anxieties. And so what happens is you look for things that are going on in the world that you can attach the anxiety onto. And so what you find is, like, Princess Diana dying in the UK was crazy, because it was the death of Princess Diana. It was a bad thing, but it became something absolutely massive, because it was a way for the society with all of these other issues to find something concrete to put it onto. So that's the neurotic structure, that when you're fearful of something, it's often a metaphor that is telling you something that's happening in your own life. But of the psychotic structure is concrete thinking, where a person literally thinks the world is falling apart. Like, they literally look at the world and maybe they think that pedophiles run Hollywood, or neo-Nazis run the organs of state, or Satanists are connected to corporations. Whatever it is, whatever these kind of, but they literally think it. And that's what's called the return in the real, is that, like, for a psychotic individual, if they might literally feel that their body is falling apart. It's not a metaphor. They literally think, I'm falling apart. I have to wrap my body.
They believe it.
They believe it. But it's what they cannot face within themselves, they put into reality. And some preppers, so it's different. If you talk to a prepper and they're like, I think the world's falling to pieces and I've got a bunker, that's fine. It might be a metaphor for their relationship with their parents. But if you meet a prepper and they say, God told me the end of the world is currently happening, I can see it occurring. Like, there's no metaphor. It's literal. It's literal. And that's really scary,
Yeah, that's when I say, check, please. I'm heading out of that conversation. That's too much. Because if someone truly believes that kind of thing, it's, I think, very difficult to have any kind of discourse with them.
Yes, because it's not even belief. It's like certainty. It's like, it's a tyranny of certainty. It's the tyranny of certainty, which is you literally can't not believe that something's happening.
Yeah,
and that's very difficult. And that's the onset of delusion. Whenever you have someone who feels, for example, that the world is full of meaning, and they know for sure, they absolute certainty that something is happening, then often that is the beginning of a delusional breakdown.
Yeah.
And so Darian Leader uses an example of a person who I think he was seeing, who literally felt that he was falling apart, like literally his body was falling apart. So he would wrap his body in cling film, Right, so he'd wrap his body in cling film to keep himself together. So this was an experience of him feeling that his ego was fragmenting. But because he had a psychotic structure, he couldn't see that as a metaphor, so it was literal. Concrete thinking means you don't think in metaphorical ways, you think in literal ways. So he literally felt he was falling apart. And Darian Leader, working with this guy, said, you know, one of the solutions can be to make your own clothes, to make clothes that are tight-fitting, that hold you together. But basically what you see is that, one is there's a logic to him wrapping his body in cling film. He feels literally he's falling apart. That shows that there's something in his life that he can't face, that he feels he's falling apart, his ego is fragmenting. And the therapy says, well, let's start with finding a different way of acting, so you can make your own clothes, you can hold yourself together in that way.
Let's modify your behavior so people can take you seriously next time you come in here.
Yeah.
So you're not wrapped in cling tape.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit crazy. And then what's beautiful is you go, you know, eventually, very gradually, that person might begin to go, oh, this is just how I feel. This is my subjectivity. Do
you think there's a chance that someone like that, who feels like they're falling apart and it manifests in a literal wrapping themselves in cling tape, that they're also maybe, I mean, they're mummifying themselves. It sounds like a mummy kind of deal, and mummies were meant to preserve, you know, people's bodies into the afterlife. It's a very ancient kind of ritual thing, and you wrap everything up, and then this person is trying to make sure they survive into the next phase of whatever their existence is. And this is just what we do here, folks, on the Fundamentalists. Thank you so much.
I mean,
like and subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, some of these rituals that we do come from, like, so psychotics, because they don't use metaphor, they use concrete language. They make very good musicians and stuff. It's like they talk about feelings that are so palpable, because that's how they feel. So whenever I have a friend who has a psychotic structure, when he says that he feels the world screaming in suffering, that the world is suffering, he doesn't mean it metaphorically. He literally hears the world screaming. He literally feels it, and he writes music, and he can create these beautiful expressions, but he doesn't mean it metaphorically. He means it literally. Yeah. But then people take it as a metaphor. So I think a lot of rituals that we have developed over time are developed from concrete thinking, that we just go, that's a beautiful metaphor. But for a psychotic structure, it's like, it's not a metaphor. I literally hear the world screaming.
You're doing it. No.
Yeah.
You're taking it at face value.
Yeah. And neurotic goes, that's a beautiful way of describing the end of the world. Yeah.
I've been getting, as I mentioned, into UFOs a fair bit. We mentioned it on the last podcast. I do want you to watch The Phenomenon. I've talked to basically everyone about it, and I am in the generation that most of my personality is based on stuff I watched 2 weeks ago. So I think it's important that everyone watch it. It's on Amazon, and it's wonderful. But okay, so also, if we're speaking psychotically, may I give you my most I will give you my most psychotic opinion that I have on how to move forward in the future. Right. And I want your honest interpretation of this.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a logical guy, grew up religious, left it, like to think myself a little spiritual, enjoy this type of conversation, et cetera, et cetera. You all know the biography. I have done some fun stuff, do other things here. It's all very wonderful. I think the only way that we can save existence as we know it, if we even want to, big question, is we have to ask the aliens for help. Now, Pete, listen to me. Yeah. I don't mean this metaphorically. No. And this is certainly not some sort of unconscious cry for spirituality or returning to the womb or regressive tendency. There's aliens.
Yeah.
They're
hanging around. Right.
So yes, I'm very logical.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not hanging around. I think they know not to get caught for our benefit. Yes. I think they're very elegant. Right. That's my theory. Elegant.
They won't get involved until we ask them.
In a serious way.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to ask them, because why do we have to ask them? Well, here's what's fun about asking them. To ask the aliens for help is a submission. It's an admission of our own inadequacies as a species to handle the complexities that we're currently dealing with, from pandemics to global warming to just general fracturing. I imagine it's very strange for an alien to come to a planet of one singular dominating species that has divided itself into countless sort of land barriers that don't make any sense. I imagine they're probably pretty confused about that, and I think they're probably not really loving all the cell phone addiction and that kind of stuff. And I think that in order for us to get any kind of help, we have to ask for help. Now, the problem is that that can't happen, and it will never happen, because a government who is privy to the idea that people might unite across the world to ask for this kind of assistance may in turn undermine governments and borders and that kind of thing. And therefore it is in government's best interest to, of course, hide the idea of UFOs, keep them under wraps. But in actuality, if we as the people were to rise up, were to humbly ask. Now, also, humbly ask is a incredibly important part of it, because I believe that we are engineered by way of being born in the Western world, where we want to pioneer, we want to, dare I say, penetrate, we want to conquer, we want to dominate, and therefore it is counterintuitive to us to want to humbly ask for help. But in doing so, I think it will reveal that we actually have help out there. That's the craziest thing I actually entertain. But I also thought we live in a simulation for a while, so I don't care. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I'll switch my beliefs in the drop of a hat. I don't care. You did this to me.
So there's the physical belief, there's the physical thought, belief that you're playing with and maybe, take on. And then there's the question of, does that say, is anything hitching a ride with that? Is there a sense in which you feel you need to ask for help? Is there a sense in which you feel that you need a sense of transcendence, there's something out there that has the answer?
No. Just give it. Yeah, maybe, but that's not the fun part.
Yes. Yeah.
Be that as it may,
yes,
we still need to ask the aliens for help. No, I actually don't. That doesn't truly, if I'm being completely honest, it does not ring true psychologically, if I may speak as seriously as possible. But I also just get, you know what it is more than anything? If I'm being honest with you, I think there's a little bit of a, what is it called when you're just like, there's a law of diminishing returns on the shocks you can have. And I think that maybe particularly I've dealt with a certain level of like shocks and weird things that are difficult to process. So maybe on one sense, there's part of me wanting some sort of like absolute answer that calms everything down, that makes everything go away, that makes everything peaceful. But there's still the reality of UFOs that we have to contend with, as well as the, dying planet. So I don't know.
No, and like the thing I said to you when we talked about this, going like, my main skepticism about UFOs and is that it seems very primitive technology. If there is a, hyper intelligent, like, we're talking millions of years more advanced galactic travelers, the idea that they use metallic objects rather than have evolved into some sort of like post being, into some sort of energy, I find kind of, I'm surprised, because for me, to be honest, life starts with being, then enters into being and mind, and then if you progress, it'll go into pure mind. So humans are mind and matter. We are this kind of amalgamation of being and thinking. So the idea that there's a super advanced species that haven't evolved into pure mind seems a bit weird to me. It feels like UFOs look like us using our present thinking to look at what the future might look like.
Yeah, it would be a little convenient that the most earth-shattering discovery in the world kind of fits with what we thought it was going to be.
Just faster, and kind of like, these machines are faster than we can do, and they seem to be They can do angles that our aircraft can't make, but ultimately it's just a bit better than where we're currently at.
It is like that, yeah. It is like, oh, they can go underwater and then they can make a right turn in a way that no aircraft can make.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I guess they exist. But you should watch that documentary because there's other parts that I don't even want to get into.
Is that right?
That might tip the scales on you. But I also wonder, do you not want to believe? Are you yourself resistant to the idea of a outer big other that maybe makes you interpret this type of data in a way that is more materialistic or mechanistic than it is?
That's right. Well, do you know what's it called? Is it, there's a name for it. This is something paradox, but it's basically there's a strange phenomenon, and the strange phenomenon is that it's obviously incredibly likely, it's incredibly unlikely that there isn't higher life forms and more sophisticated life forms in the universe, and yet the universe isn't filled with noise, right? So any species, any highly evolved species creates noise. And to date, unless you believe it's hidden, but to date we haven't really encountered this vast amount of noise that you would expect. And so the question is, why haven't we? So the question is not, is there life out there? But, you start with that presupposition that there's highly advanced life forms. And then you have to go, well, why is there not a whole pile of noise that we pick up? And then there's a whole pile of reasons for this. But the one I'm most convinced by is that actually getting to the point of, let's call it post-humanism, but or a point of kind of like where we move beyond into interstellar travel, all of that is so difficult, that it's so monumentally difficult that it's virtually never happens. It virtually never happens. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's like there is even a possibility that when life gets to our level, it always destroys itself. And there's a psychoanalytic dimension to that. It's like once self-consciousness comes into being, death drive by definition comes into being, and then species auto-destroy.
This message will destruct in however long. But I will say, it does seem like you're using human logic to decipher certain things the same way that you're saying that, you would. It's weird that the ships look the way we would expect them to look. I would also say when we went to the moon, supposedly.
Yeah. Thank you.
But it was expected that the dust on the moon would be way greater. Like it would be way deeper. It would almost, you'd sink into it. It was like 2.5 inches.
Yeah.
We don't know.
True.
We don't know
creationists
nothing. We know
use
nothing.
that argument. Yeah. Although I don't think NASA believed that, but I have heard creationists say that.
Yeah, and they were right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I do think obviously that life is evolved and probably in multiple places, even maybe in Mars. There might be life on Mars,
What I'm really, maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
If they find, the moment they find a bacteria somewhere, anywhere, if they find a living bacteria creature that was not left there by us, but was like, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
I'm throwing a party.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be so, that's an alien. We found aliens and we're going to go crazy. It's so cool.
Or we are the alien, as you know. It's like we're from space. But
Panspermia.
The big thing is that that the universe has the ability to create conscious beings because we exist and we're self-conscious. So the idea that there definitely is, the universe has the ability to create self-conscious beings, and so probably wherever life comes out of being, eventually, if it survives long enough, consciousness will come out of life, self-consciousness will come out of consciousness, and that's potentially happened in a lot of places.
Maybe something comes out of self-consciousness that we're not aware of too.
Yeah, but if death drive is a real thing, then there's a possibility that there's been lots of civilized species and we all just end up destroying ourselves. And that's what maybe we'll destroy ourselves before we get to the point where we can go out and colonize other planets.
He said as he sips his gin and tonic.
Yeah.
Get it?
This is self-destructive.
Self-destruct,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely,
That was the whole
absolutely, 100%. My God, I like nobody's immune to it.
I don't know. I like this episode. I don't know if we talked about the topic at all, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's been nice to hang out with you for a little
Yeah,
bit.
maybe that's all. Maybe we should have a disclaimer not to listen to this if you're wanting anything too deep.
No.
Yeah.
Is there any big deep thing you want to throw out to people?
Yeah, the only thing is the difference between metaphorical and concrete thinking. That metaphorical thinking is whenever you're fearful of something or the apocalypse, often that can be a way of you telling yourself that you're fearful of something in your own life, your relationship with somebody, your worry about work, so your fear is a metaphor. But if you're tyrannized by certainty, then maybe that's usually a symbol that there's something so traumatic in your life that you can't even subjectivize it. You can't even make it into a metaphor. There's something very, very painful. And so you literally believe the world is going to end, but it's because you literally believe that you're going to end. You literally believe that you're falling apart. And those are two forms that that's two forms in which you communicate to yourself.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I would add, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, but because those are two different things. The cool thing to me about the whole discussion and the whole idea is that you can identify these, like, who cares if they're paranoid or extreme? Like, I'm talking about asking aliens for help. I know that's an insane, like, thing. If I was
Yeah.
maybe it's not, but it would be weird if I was like, this is what I think. But like, I can learn from that fun crackpot idea I've come up with about where I'm at psychologically, and I think that's great.
That's the point. So the point is not that you're wrong or right about something. So somebody can think, someone can say, for example, I think Western democracy is under threat of collapse, right? I think that, right? So that's the thought. And then you discover that you think that you're collapsing. That doesn't mean you're wrong. You can, like, that's what I mean by the unconscious hitches a ride with the truth.
Yeah.
You know, the whole Lacanian thing, which is if you're pathologically jealous that your wife is having an affair and your wife is having an affair, you're still pathologically jealous. You're just right.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is like, actually you can have your objective belief about the world, but it usually says something about yourself. It usually includes, because otherwise you wouldn't be interested in it, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a fun little game you can play where you play a little detective on your own neuroses, and you go, oh, okay, I think this, all right, yeah, all right, oh boy, maybe I should, do I think this? And it sounds probably maybe 100% of the time counter to what you think about yourself. Yeah. And that's when you know you're touching the unconscious stuff, which is just, we're just having fun.
Yeah, because I think I've said to you, like, I think that we are, potentially there's a small chance that we're seeing the end of American worldwide dominance. There's going to be a collapse of a certain form of democracy. I think that is.
Yes, you have your own. Your own.
But there's part of myself in that, and it's not that it's false, but it's like something else always hitches a ride.
That's what's fun. That's what I like about this particular podcast is I don't think we will ever be on the boat of being like, democracy is crumbling, build a bunker, or aliens are coming, start wearing your tinfoil hats. But I do think that along the way, it's fun to be like, is this you, maybe? Yeah. Is this just your own brain that's coming up with this shit? Which is very fun.
And what do you, like, I know we're coming to an end, but I'm interested, like, what would you like the aliens to help us with, to kind of basically not destroy ourselves? You think these guys might kind of...
I think we need a shift in consciousness, Pete. I think we need to understand. We need it's the equivalent of when, like, the toddler is walking out into the street with traffic and you gotta be like, don't go into the traffic. And I think we need a nice unifying thing to bring everyone together to go, hey, we're all in this together.
But do we not already know that?
Know what?
That we should all kind of work together and be nicer to each other? Why?
But yet here we are.
Yeah, so if an alien said it, why would that have more weight?
Oh, it'd be fun to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know, it'd be cool to see. I want to see what they look like, and I also it just opens up a Pandora's box of questions about our existence, and to see also,
because to be honest, like John Lennon said, we should all love each other, and I think most of us agree. So I'm like, so what? These are John Lennon types. They're going to come and go, guys, you should be nicer to each other. And we're going to, we never thought of that.
well, okay,
Holy shit,
right.
That's amazing.
okay. First of all,
Okay.
John Lennon was an alien.
Yeah, okay.
But one alien doesn't do any good. You need a group of aliens. Like,
Yeah.
it has to be a visitation on a cosmic scale.
Do they have to threaten us? Like, if you don't start working together, we're going to kill you all?
No. I don't think there's any kind of threat. I think it is purely altruistic and probably. I mean, look, I'm just making shit up. I don't know. It's fun to talk about. I like to think that there's a trans-dimensional element to this. They're showing us images. Whatever. Here we go. They're showing us images that we can comprehend, and maybe toying, maybe whatever, or maybe people are so stressed out and so scared and so confused because of the culture in which they've been brought up in, that has taught them that, like, there's nothing to latch onto for your existence, or as you say, the unconscious for it to latch onto. So maybe we're all having grand hallucinations about the same thing, and they all look the same. It's just so weird. It's so fascinating, and it almost seems like the easiest answer is the most obvious one, Occam's razor, which is that there's, people, the aliens are visiting, and no one cares.
Yeah.
I think maybe no one gives a shit.
Yeah. Well, see, yeah. And in psychoanalysis, there's an idea of the subject supposed to know, which is human beings have to believe there is a subject that knows, that has the answer, and in that, so a person thinks a therapist is the subject supposed to know. They know what the answer is, and that fiction allows them to very gradually start to work out their whole thing. So
Transference.
Yeah, so UFOs might be a form of subject supposed to know, because even if they did exist, right, let's assume they exist, let's assume that they have a message of peace, they're going to be they're also going to be divided subjects. They're also going to have their own fears and anxieties and whatever.
Why?
Just the trauma of being. Why did you say? Because to be a creature of language is to be a creature that... So it's just like a
Do you think
dictionary.
they're a creature of language?
What's that?
Maybe they're not a creature of language.
If they're not a creature of language, then... Which is possible, because we have them on the planet. Like, so we have, we have like dolphins, or not dolphins, but we have snails, whatever.
We do have dolphins, Pete.
Yeah.
Pete always says he doesn't believe in dolphins, but
Yeah.
dolphins are real.
We have dolphins.
I can show you so much footage. I've seen them in real life.
But if something is not a creature of language, and it's not in the symbolic, and then it's not going to be able to, then there's an incommensurable world. How does these aliens communicate to us if they're not within a symbolic regime?
I mean, I have a theory that if you compare the behavior of every single UFO sighting and where they actually see the aliens or whatever, they have some kind of encounter, they do act not unlike a dolphin.
Is that right?
Which is my other theory, that dolphins are smarter than us.
Should we release this episode? Should we release this episode?
Yeah,
because
I
I
don't
think
give a
we're
shit.
nuts.
Well,
I think it's
no, I'm not nuts. I truly,
No,
I'm not.
we are.
I swear to God, I'm not crazy.
Okay,
No.
so we're going to release this episode.
It's just fun shit to talk about because, like, first of all, dolphins are smarter than us and aliens are real. All right, everybody, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Peace. We come in peace.